Our next speaker is a Chief Executive Officer for Forcepoint. His name is Matt Moynahan. Forcepoint launched a bold new approach to cybersecurity, centered upon enabling customers to focus on what matters most, which is understanding people's behaviors and intent as they interact with critical data and systems everywhere. His title will be Modern Cybersecurity Accelerates Digital Vision Transformation. Let's all give a big round of applause for Mr. Matt.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you all here today. Absolute pleasure to be with you all here today, particularly given how dynamic a time it is in Saudi, and with the execution of your exciting journey on Vision 2030 and the National Transformation Program. You know, in preparation for today's talk, I was reading through a lot of the 2030 documentation, and I was really struck with the words that came through. Words like enable, access, collaboration. While technology will clearly play a big role in the execution of your vision, we have to remember that this is all about the Saudi people. It's about enabling Saudi people, the Saudi workforce, to be more productive, to be more efficient, to be more dynamic, and help the kingdom create a more diverse economy for the future. But tech is only an enabler to the people, not the end game itself. And that's very important. Why is it important to realize that it's not about technology? Because hackers change. Hackers like to take advantage of change with people, with economies, and with technology. And they're very good at using change to do damage to businesses and the economy. So today I'd like to talk about my vision, Forcepoint vision and approach for how to secure the modern enterprise, for how you can think about securing your vision in 2030 and future-proofing that vision. So this is not a speech about fear or doubt or technology. Really is about learning from our past to make better decisions to future-proof the vision of 2030. So to understand a little bit more about what I'm talking about, let's take a look at digital disruption. This is quite obvious. The companies mentioned on this screen have all been about disruption and emerged as modern winners in this new economy. These leaders represent the ability to survive and thrive in an entirely new world. Surviving and thriving is why the KSA launched this new, bold vision. And it's just decided to spend the money and take on the challenges that go along with modernizing an economy. These companies represent the tremendous value that can be created and also destroyed when you get it right or wrong. So to be clear, digital transformation and Vision 2030 is about capturing a piece of the economic pie and creating a competitive advantage that will allow you to capture a piece of the $100 trillion of economic value that will be created in this new digital economy. So, over the past decade, there's been tremendous innovation, as we all know. There's been mobility, software as a service, development of cloud, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, IoT, edge commerce, and much of this transformation, much of this new capability has found its way into the modern enterprise. It's starting to find its way into governments. Both public and private sector are starting to behave very differently. The modern enterprise is no longer about a data center and a headquarters. It's open. It's collaborative. So the modern enterprise is open. It's collaborative. It's about access anytime, anywhere. And so over the last 7 years, $1 trillion has been spent in cybersecurity, trying to secure this changing environment. So let's take a look at how good we, the enterprises in this room, and the vendors that you're hearing from today, have done in securing that environment. This statistic is absolutely mind-boggling to me. It represents why something has to change. $1 trillion has been spent in the past 7 years, and 95% of all global enterprises have been breached. What does that tell you? 95% success rate for the hackers. The reason? The shifting technology, these new technologies create new seams in the infrastructure, create new policies, create new blind spots. Every single time there's technological change, things get more complicated. In our rush to adopt these technologies that can drive such innovation and create such value, we forget around the implications of our decisions for tomorrow. Today's environment is so complex. The architectures are unmanageable. So this is what happens when moving fast to do the right thing creates the wrong thing. An unmanageable environment when we're trying to build our business or our country on a new platform. And so we can't lose sight of the big picture. Saudi has a tremendous opportunity to leapfrog the competition. You're so young in your journey, yet all the signs are there for you to be a leader. If you look at the profile of your workforce, smartphone usage, the connected nature of the environment, you're a hub, your geographical location, it's a huge opportunity to learn from the mistakes of the past and set Vision 2030 up for a long, successful run. So let's take a look. No company has been spared, including the United States. Whether it was the NSA leaks or Equifax, in Europe, you had Google fined 50 million euro, you had British Airways fined 230 million, and even the KSA has one of the highest breach costs right behind the United States. If we learn from our past mistakes, or at least our past decisions, KSA should be able to leapfrog the competition in this new realm. It reminds me a little bit of the situation Italy was in, back when they were behind in telecommunications. And then mobile technologies came out. And then overnight, Italy became one of the most wired countries in the world, with more phones per capita than even the US. This is the opportunity. So how does Saudi and Vision 2030 secure your cloud, people, and data in this new world? How do you secure your national transformation agenda? Well, your vision for security for the next 30 years must be as clear as the economic vision this nation has. Why? Because cybersecurity itself is being disrupted. For the first time in the past 30 years, you could argue, for the first time in the industry's life, cybersecurity is being disrupted. And no one will be spared. Why? Because the old approach of point products and stitching them together do not work anymore. I predict that within 5 years, point products will go away, die. This is very similar point in time to when software, on-premise software, almost went away. Now, the entire industry runs on software in the cloud. Security boxes, while important, on a standalone basis will not be as important as they are in the past. Look at what happened to Symantec, my former employer, being bought by a chip company. And Symantec was a good company, is a good company. The world's largest security player just went away and was bought by a chip company. It says a lot about the state of the industry. So I'd say any vendor that's selling point products today, stitching them together, or any acquirer really should think carefully around the vision for security, because the old model is not working. So why? Why is the old model not working? Because the people, your people, the Saudi people, the Saudi workforce, your partners, your customers, your suppliers are the new perimeter. The perimeter is not technology. The old saying of online and offline doesn't even make sense anymore. How many of us remember America Online? Our worlds are connected 24/7. We really need to internalize this. Dumb products on the endpoint or the network that don't talk to each other are not going to understand what's happening to them. How many people in this room have gone for a swim? Hopefully some people. We see some hands going up. Have you ever been in the water, underwater, and looked up to try to see what was happening above the water? Can we all do that? Can we all look up for a second? That's what it looks like if you're a piece of endpoint technology or a network technology. All the action is happening above you. And you're looking up, trying to figure out what's happening, and you have no idea. That's what modern security has to solve. You need to see what's happening above you. All the transactions with your people, your partners, your customers that are creating economic value for the kingdom. And make sure that they're secure. The problem with today's security technologies is that they don't know who's coming at them. All they do is blindly enforce a security policy when someone shows up and tries to do something. And it's creating friction and dissatisfaction and not enough security. The question for today's security products are, do they know who that person is coming at them? Is it a Saudi employer? Is it a partner? Or is it a hacker who's impersonating an employer? That is the key question. Who is it on your network? This question must be answered. Why? Because this is the modern network. The internet and everything connected to it, including humans, has become one big network of different trust levels. Your business no longer runs on a single network. Your activity is happening, your data is being created, your intellectual property is being used on top of a bunch of machines and wires and network traffic. How many presentations have you heard today, with all due respect to my industry, because I'm part of this industry? I've talked about architectures that talk about endpoints and network and traffic and scanning and files. That does not sound like access and collaboration and enable. It's about the people on top of the wires and machines and network traffic. Modern cybersecurity must put people and data at the center of security architectures. Not malware, not sandboxes, not rootkits. They're important. Don't get me wrong. But this new multidimensional world that we live in, those dots represent your people, your partners, and customers. The cloud, email. These are just applications by which your data and people interact, and we're not securing them. We must think differently for the future. And Vision 2030, and this bold approach, we can transform this economy, has an opportunity to do it right from the start. The old cybersecurity model was about managing the complexity. You can see this infrastructure project. It's pretty complex. This is what networks look like. Every time you create an application, every time you go to the cloud, every time you put a new entry point into your company, it makes things more complicated. And we as a security industry have been selling boxes and selling an approach designed to lock the doors and lock the windows, keep people out. But the modern economy isn't about keeping people out. It's about thriving. It's around collaborating. And it's not around protecting machines or wires. And so we really need to think differently and say modern cyber has to focus on the two constants that exist regardless of the technical innovation. Those two constants are people and the data they create. When nation states or hackers attack, what are they attacking for? What are they after? They're after data. They're after intellectual property. They're after trade secrets. That's where the value is. That's where the value is. I use the example. If you were living in a neighborhood, in a house, and you didn't trust your neighbors, and the door would never lock, how would you secure your family? Locks could not protect you. Most customers, most chief security officers answer, well, I would think differently. I would secure my family differently. I would use motion sensors. I'd use video cameras. I would use X-ray. This is different. The problem with the internet wasn't that it wasn't secure. The problem with the internet is that it was built on anonymity, privacy. So you can't see what's going on. And that works in our favor in many times, but it also causes problems for business. And so I would encourage everyone in this room, as you think about your ministry, your business, your plans, the role that you will play in this exciting 2030 vision, is how do we not play the infrastructure game anymore? How do you adopt a modern security architecture that gives you visibility into the things that matter most, but also reduces complexity, reduces false positives, makes life simpler? It can be done. This approach will dramatically improve your security posture, because most of the technologies from the cybersecurity industry have been designed to stop people from getting in. But as we've seen, they're getting in really easily. They're already in. And so what do? We need to think differently. The iPhone is an incredibly complex piece of technology, but the user experience is quite simple. This is what modern cybersecurity needs to replicate. Why? Why is this so important? I'm not preaching this because of Forcepoint. I've been in cybersecurity for 20 years, and I've built a lot of products that don't work anymore. The currency of modern cybersecurity is speed. I would really encourage the KSA to think about, in Vision 2030, how do I outmaneuver and outspeed the competition? Security is a race, just like digital transformation. This slide shows why we're losing the race. These are 3 major breaches that have happened in the United States, all for different reasons. But the common theme, there are 2 common themes. Someone got in, and they got out, and the company didn't even know about it. Think about that. Let's take Capital One. I would really encourage you to pick up a breach report and look at the announcement of the press release. The story typically goes like this, and it's very similar. Company announces a breach. The breach took place 4 or 5 months earlier, and they didn't even know how they got in or when they got out. Think about it. This is what $1 trillion of spend has got us. And it's not because the cybersecurity industry isn't trying. We've been focusing on too many technologies stitched together that have prevented us from seeing all the activity on the endpoint and the network. Equifax, $750 million fine. British Airways, $230 million fine. Google, $50 million fine. Marriott, $200 million. On and on and on. This is what needs to be solved. And so when you think about it, and I firmly, firmly believe in this, we need to flip the model on its head. Everything that happens on a network, every single activity that happens on a network is tied to identity. All the bits and bytes and events and activities are all tied to identity. Companies authenticate users, they give authorization to resources, and then people steal stuff. The reason why today's security model is challenged is because on the left-hand side, traditional security, it thinks in terms of infrastructure first. How do I protect everything? How do I secure everything? You can't. It's impossible. When I ask chief security officers or chief executives, will you ever be secure? What do they say? No. Okay. So what sort of protection do you need, assuming someone gets in? The left-hand model, the old model, is around infrastructure first, creating a policy of all the bad things that could happen and trying to stop it from happening with everyone. It's very black and white. But the world is gray in this world of access and collaboration. Good people turn bad. Nation states plant enemies inside of workforces. It's impossible to put a policy against someone that you trust. That's why hackers are taking advantage of this. The right-hand model is what modern security is all about. We call it a Forcepoint human-centric security. It can be applied to machines, though, too. So what is human-centric security? It's a lot like what like Amazon or Netflix do. They understand the behavioral, they understand the purchase patterns of people, and they go serve up the right content. Human-centric cybersecurity is around understanding the behavioral patterns of the people you trust, the people you are letting in, and then making sure that the behavior of those identities is consistent. And when you do that, you can deliver a personal security capability down to an individual. And you can go from one to many to one to one. When you have an enterprise security policy for an individual, you can move fast. You can change your security posture when risk changes. Why? Because if you make a slight mistake, it's only against one person, not the entire company. It will not shut the network down. It will not create phone calls or support issues. So it's a very, very, very powerful model. So I'll leave with a couple of slides as you think about Vision 2030 and how to go get this competitive advantage. The first thing that I would recommend is to identify where your business or your ministry or your mission is in the digital race. This is just a simple chart that we use with clients to help them identify where they are. Are you infrastructure-centric and mostly on-premise? Are you information-centric and starting to use things like DLP, CASB? Are you analytics-centric and using Splunk? Or do you have an opportunity to leapfrog to behavior-centric? You do not need to go through each one of these phases, but the use of your technology will tell you where you might be. And then you can take your posture and map it against your competitor. It may be a business, it may be a nation state, it could be whatever. But really think through, where am I in my capabilities set? And what people do I need to execute this? Last slide, second to last slide here. Then think about, what are the requirements for your people? When I go in and talk to governments, and I talk to large corporations, I ask them two questions. I never talk about technology. What are the security requirements of your people? Where do they work? What people are targets for foreign nation states or adversaries? What people have to have zero security friction because they have to get their job done quickly? It's a very, very powerful concept. And depending on the answers, you will know what technologies you need to deploy. The second question, what data really matters to you? What data creates the most value? What data cannot be stolen? If you look at some of the statistics on the Saudi market, some of the biggest concerns now, 38% are concerned around trade secrets, 25% around state secrets. Right? Intellectual property is the currency of the day. You've seen all these lawsuits in the US with Tesla and Google and Uber. It's amazing, really. People and data. It's not about servers and endpoints and sandboxing and SOAR or AI and ML. They should be the servants to the master of the workforce, which is really what the Vision 2030 is all about. Enable, access, and collaboration. That's what this slide represents. Everything else is just a technology underneath that. So lastly, this is a positive story. Forcepoint is partnering with companies and nation states to help them execute their digital transformation agenda, trying to drive workforces forward, talking about requirements for people and data first, and technology second. Security is a business issue. Make no state about it. Tomorrow's security paradigms will be far more secure if we learn from today. 2020, 2030 are not that far away. This continual change in technology, if we focus on the technology, will have us in the same place 10 years from now as we are today. There is too much innovation. But if the KSA can learn from all the mistakes that have been made in the past, it has a fantastic opportunity to leapfrog many of the countries and commercial competitors that are out there today with legacy architectures. Thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any Q&A if there's any questions in the audience. Thank you.
We'll have one question.
You have shown us one picture about many highways are connected by crossing bridges, and you have mentioned that all cyber was controlling this. Show me how this is just structural engineering design. Explain to me this point, please, and we can open some points for discussion, please.
Sure. So, no, modern legacy cybersecurity was around complexity. In the old days, you may have heard the term defense by diversity. The more vendors you have, the more confusing it will be for a hacker to figure out what's going on. That failed. The complexity worked against us instead of for us. So my point with that slide was, we need a solution that focuses on what's happening above all the infrastructure, that understands people, identity, and data flows, and isn't about boxes, wires, policies, multiple vendors. And so it needs to be more simple, not more complex. And then you can focus on managing the simplicity easier. You need to have something that makes it clear, like the iPhone, that this person is who they say they are and is behaving the way that a Saudi government or a business wants them to behave based on the rights and privileges of doing business with them. That's what I meant by that.
One time, I have my laptop. I see a message say another computer save my keyboard writing. Is this a hacker or what's this?
So, from what I understand, what you asked, things will happen on laptops that will try to trick you or take over a laptop or what have you. So a lot of endpoint technologies or network technologies will look for something called an indicator of compromise. What is happening on my laptop, or what is that? Okay, so what that is a hacker or something using a tool to get onto the network. So my point is, that's important. Defenses like that are more like hygiene, like brushing your teeth. They're really important, but they're not going to stop a cavity. The cavity comes when that activity on your endpoint gets onto the network, starts moving around your network, gets access to data or intellectual property, and steals it. So that activity is the beginning of a story. An end user has been compromised, and now the game begins. 90% of all infrastructure breaches come through people. The US nuclear power plant was hacked by Russia through identity theft. Tricking someone on a laptop to give them credentials, and once you're on, you do what you need to do as a hacker. That's my point. So these types of technologies are important, but they don't stop everything. They don't stop the data exfiltration, and that was my point.